Hey everyone, what happens when you find out more about your neighbors than you bargained for? This week on Checking In with Mary Lynn. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks.
What's happening today? What are you thinking about when you're walking down the street? Is your head in a cloud? Don't you want to know what's going on? Let's go! Checking in with Mary Lynn. Checking in with Mary Lynn. Checking in with Mary Lynn. Let's check in with Mary Lynn.
Hello everyone, you're listening to Checking In with Mary Lynn. Don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. Let's keep the podcast going, shall we? How's everybody been? Hey, do you like your neighbors? What's up with neighbors? What's the reality of how they function in our lives? I think everybody has a fantasy that they live in a small town where everybody talks to each other and you can go and borrow a cup of sugar to make your cookies if you're in the 50s and you're at home and you're a housewife and you're ironing and you're in the middle of baking and taking care of the kids. And then you go next door to your neighbors to borrow a cup of sugar. Does that ever happen? Have you ever been brought a cookies or a baked good to your doorstep? Is that a thing that happens? Where do you live? It's just all too much to try to understand people's different neighbors' experiences, so I'll just tell you mine. We have been brought cookies by the neighbors across the street. It's been a couple years, but they used to do it on the holidays, I think to welcome us to the neighborhood. And that same neighbor one time stood up for me when the parking was taken in front of my house for filming. They were filming something and they didn't have permission. And he came over and he said, you know, I've worked in the industry before, and you're in the industry, you're an actor, and this is a bunch of bullshit. They can't just renegade shoot here. I'm calling the union on them. I thought that was pretty great. I like how worked up he got. And he's right, but I took a different tactic of, I hope they get the shot. And then I realized, you know what? He's right. They can't just pull up to our neighborhood, close down the street, take a bunch of space, so that they can get a nice suburban shot with trees to look good for their shoot and not pay for it. You gotta pay. Am I right? And I love to check Next Door Neighbor app. I don't love to check it, but I do because one day I signed up for it because I thought, I want to know what's going on in the neighborhood. It's another social network, but smaller, and everyone's bitching on it. So now it gives me alerts, and I'm weirdly attracted and just annoyed by the alerts at the same time. It's just a time waster in my timeline, where I think, I better click on that and see what's going on in the neighborhood. But on the other hand, they do report things that are going on in the neighborhood. If there's a weird noise or there's smoke in the air, you can go on there and people will tell you what they think is happening. Sometimes people have actual information. I'm also always impressed when somebody will send a link to, what was it? Recently, there's always something going on too. It's this house that is an uncredited safe house for people who are trying to get sober. And one neighbor was bitching about it, saying, this shouldn't be in the house next door to me. These people are not licensed, and it's a bunch of people living together trying not to get high, but inevitably one of them or all of them end up getting high again and wandering the street, and the cops have to be called, and it's happening again and again, and the city won't do anything about it. And then this other guy says, hey, it's really hard to get sober and these people need a safe place. He's sticking up for them. And then everyone attacked him and said, there's a right way to do this and this isn't the right way. And it's not a licensed house and this shouldn't be happening. And, are you going to go and help them? I don't think you would like it if you live next door to them. Meanwhile, there's always something dangerous and horrible going on, which, is very titillating, but I choose to just live in my bubble and assume that it's a safe, nice neighborhood, which it is in general. Guys, I don't know. We live in Los Angeles. Even in the safest suburban neighborhoods, we still have homeless people nearby, and it's hard because they're people and they're trying to live, and so you don't want to ostracize anybody, but you also want to be safe in your neighborhood. So it's a balance, and I like living in a big city. I'm not saying I like that element of danger, but I like that it's diverse isn't the right word. I like that there's a lot going on, and it's not just a sleepy, quiet neighborhood. It's partly that, but there's also an ecosystem, a social ecosystem that's around it. There's a big city. There's people of all different ethnicities, for the most part, depending on where you go. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked trying to describe that. You get it, the neighborhood. So, yeah, I look on Next Door Neighbor. Oh, that kind of leads me to my neighbor across the street. Well, there is the one guy who had the squirrel on his shoulder and fed the squirrel, and then the squirrel died, and he tried to build his carport because I think he had a lot of time on his hands because he devoted so much time to the squirrel, and he was so sad that he started building his carport, and the neighbors complained because it wasn't, they didn't get a permit for it. So then he said, F you, I'm going to pull an RV into the yard in the space that takes up the carport, and it's just going to sit there, and that's going to be my new add-on. And for some reason, they called him out on having a permit, and he wasn't allowed to build it. But I guess there's nothing they can do to get the RV off there, and I don't really care enough to. Oh, that's what I was saying earlier, that there's always some neighbor that about that safe house they posted. Well, here's the official report. The city's not doing anything about it. And I clicked on it, and it's some minutes of, the city where we live, where they were talked about it in a meeting, but I immediately got bored and didn't read it. But I love how someone's always got the official take on it, and then they're always trying to, infighting of what the majority thinks, what their opinion is, and then someone will come in with actual facts, and no one really cares about the facts, and they all just bitch and decide amongst themselves the overriding opinion based on nothing. Okay, so my other neighbor, I have the type of personality where I'm either aloof, don't talk to me. I didn't even realize I was doing this because for me it's a self-preservation, because otherwise I'm completely open, and sometimes I'm just open and people are attracted to it and they want to talk to me because they see a mark, right? They see, there's an ear. There's an active listener and someone who will feel my feelings and listen to me, and will have a hard time saying no to me if I approach them. And this is a safe space, a soft landing, if you will. So my neighbor across the street is walking towards me. One day I'm getting out of my car, going into the house, and I can just sense his energy. And I thought, oh gosh, he's coming to talk to me. And he says, hi, so I know you haven't seen me a lot since the stroke. And I'm going, I don't even know your name. And I don't know if I've ever seen you. And he's walking with a cane, and he said, yeah, I haven't really been around for a while. And I immediately went into this mode of, this guy needs me. He needs somebody to talk to right now. And he's so desperate that in his mind, he thinks we've met before. But on the other hand, have we met? And I just don't remember him. And then it's on me. All the way around, it's on me. If we've met before, then I owe him to pay attention to him and try to figure out who he is. And if we haven't met before, then he just needs someone to talk to, and he's chosen me right now. And if I can help this guy by being an ear, I mean, who comes up to a stranger and says, yeah, I haven't talked to you since the stroke? Is there something wrong with me? Or would you do the same thing and listen to this guy? Or I should have just, I don't know. I felt special, but also beholden to him, because again, he needed someone to talk to. And he said, yeah, I've been slowly coming back after the stroke. And I did muster up the courage to ask him his name, even though he acted like I knew about his stroke. But I guess that's just the way that was his entry point. He needed to be familiar with me. And so he lives with his parents. He's coming back from his stroke. He collapsed, and it's been really hard and slow. But he's made a lot of progress. He couldn't move the entire half of his body and his face, and he couldn't remember things, but now it's slowly coming back. And I was really, thinking he was brave and really saying that's so great. And he said, yeah, it's just so hard. My whole life is different now. And then he revealed that the stroke was brought on by his meth use, and his body finally collapsed from his years of using drugs. And he said, I just unfortunately tried meth one day, actually with our other neighbor. So then he revealed to me that the neighbor next door to us is the one that turned him on to meth. I was like, oh, great. Good to know. Thanks for the info. And he said, yeah, we were just hanging out. And he said, have you ever tried this? And I said, no, I had only smoked pot up to that point. And then at that point, once I tried it, it was over. That's all I wanted to do. I would just go and listen to heavy metal up in my room. And my parents didn't know I was doing it. And I would look out the window at you and your happy family. And I thought, well, I could never say hello to them. I don't want to be around them. I'm on meth. So I started going to gay bars and sitting at gay bars and drinking and doing meth. And quite honestly, it was the best I've ever felt. It's the best feeling I've ever had in my life. And for some reason, the meth brought out in me an urge to put on makeup and women's clothes. And then I was having gay sex, but I wasn't gay. I think I'm making that up. I think he just dressed up and didn't have sex, but he realized he had this proclivity for women's clothing, but only when he was on meth. He said, now that I'm off the meth, my facial hair has started coming back and I've gained weight and I don't have an urge to put on lipstick and women's clothing anymore. And I'm going, go on. My ice cream is melting and my frozen pizza is no longer frozen, but I'm going to stand in the street and talk to you for as long as you want to tell me about your meth use. And he did hit on men. Wait, I don't think he told me. I think he was being a gentleman. He must have had sex with men. I mean, you don't get on meth and get all jacked up and not. I think he just didn't tell me about that, and I'm extrapolating. So then he drops all this on me. He leaves, and it's blowing my mind. And I end up telling him I'm proud of him, and I really am. I think it's hard for anyone to get sober, especially after having a stroke on meth and living with your parents, and he doesn't know what he's going to do with his life. And I said, you're doing great. Oh, that's the other thing. In his mind, he jumps to, my sister's visiting and my brother-in-law, he's so successful. And I said, you know what? You're doing great. You need to not look to others to what they're doing. You're doing what a lot of people don't do, which is being honest and taking it one day at a time and really going through your shit and coming back from this addiction is really important. I need you to not look outside yourself and beat yourself up. I need you to be kind to yourself and tell yourself you're doing a good job, because you are. And even the fact that you just talked to me is so important. You're reaching out, and I can see your heart and your honesty and what you're doing. And I want you to stay focused on your recovery, because he was starting to get anxiety about this family visiting and where is he in his life, and he's not doing anything. Meanwhile, I'm going, yeah, dude, you were on meth and you live in your parents' house. But that's not important. I want you to focus on who you are in your heart, and you're a person and you have value. And that's the truth. And then he leaves, and he's very sweet. And although he's running off at the mouth and he can't help but talk, he's also very conscious. And he said, oh, I took up all your time. And I was letting him. I wanted him to, because I was hoping it was helping him, and that he needed someone to talk to. Everyone needs someone to talk to and connect with. And he wasn't being an asshole about it. He just needed that. And he recognized that he was talking a lot. And then he leaves, and I don't talk to him for a long time. I don't know what happened. I don't know how his recovery's going. I don't know if the brother-in-law came. I don't know if he's relapsed. What's happening with Chris? Next time I see him, he has a rat on his shoulder, and he's walking towards me. He said, oh, I was hoping I would see you. This is Charlie. And he talks about how Charlie's his best friend, and how Charlie is a rat. And he said, you would be surprised at how sensitive they are. And it's taking everything in me to not make some fat face and back up. Like, this is disgusting. I don't want to be around your rat. I know he's not the first one, and he won't be the last to have a pet rat. But I'm not into it, especially when I'm not expecting it. It's not like, oh, there's the guy at the fair who has a rat on his shoulder. He just, once again, is coming up to me, and I see something on his shoulder, and I don't know what it is. And the closer he gets, I'm like, oh, that's a rat. And then by this time, he's already affectionately describing that that's Charlie. And he has noticed all of Charlie's habits. And he knows when Charlie has to go to the bathroom, and they play little games. He'll put him on the stairs, and Charlie will let him know when he's feeling active and wants to play on the stairs. And Charlie sleeps with him. Charlie likes to go places with him. He'll go to the store, and Charlie will be in his pocket. And I'm going, oh my God, this is the weirdest, but I'm so happy for him that you found this connection with this rat, right? And then I get out of there, and I'm, I don't want to disrespect Charlie. He's in a delicate state, him and his relationship with Charlie. So I say, oh, it's so nice to meet you. And he's like, do you want to pet him? I said, no, that's okay. It's really nice to meet you. Charlie and Chris, I'm so glad you found each other, and great. We'll see you later. And then time passes again. I don't see him outside. For as much information as I get from him, a long time passes in between these isolated incidents. So finally, a couple months pass. I see him again. He's coming up to me. Something's wrong. Oh no. But he still seems normal. I can tell by his physicality. He still has the weight on. He's not messed up. He seems calm, but he seems sad. And he says, hey, I like your landscaping. I said, thank you. My husband did that himself. And he said, so Charlie died. I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. He said, yeah, he was my best friend. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. He said he was so smart, and he was such a good friend to me. And my mom had grown quite fond of Charlie as well. And I was surprised that she started bawling harder than I did. I didn't even really cry. And my mom was screaming and wailing, and she couldn't believe that Charlie was gone. Once again, he's blowing my mind as the active listener. I'm like, okay, what the hell? And then I remembered his mom I had encountered when I first moved in, and she was telling me how happy she was that we moved in, and I felt so special. But then I realized that her happiness was hinged on the fact that I was white, and she was sick of the blacks moving in, and she told me where the blacks and the Mexicans were, and that she's from Sweden, and she moved here and moved to the neighborhood because of its whiteness. And I was like, oh my God, cool. I'll talk to you later, because it's like I can't solve her racism in that moment. But that's his mother, is this old world white racist European woman, and that's who he lives with. And I imagine that his mother and father were, while caring, were kind of shut off from the reality of the world, and her only time that she expressed herself, and maybe her feelings about her own son. I couldn't help but think when he described her level of emotion, he said, I've never seen her cry before. And she cried a mountain of tears for Charlie. And just the way he was talking about it, I thought, these are the feelings that she hasn't allowed herself to feel about you and your drug use and the loss of your childhood and her son and her image. She's put it all into this rat. All of her raw emotions. She hasn't let herself feel it. And you guys have all made Charlie. For you, the rat has been your best friend and someone to talk to. For her, she did the same thing you did, attached all of her feelings about you instead of being able to talk to you about your illness and your addiction. She put all of her sadness and her hopes and her dreams. When Charlie died, they died with her. And all I can hope is that you guys can move on from this and maybe get some fucking help, because this is a crazy ass story. Your mom's emotionality towards this rat, because all the time, I kind of admitted that from the story. Every time he's telling me all this, he indicated that his parents cared for him, but he has a therapist, but there's a total disconnect between the parents. All this was happening in their house and they never knew it. And then the only emotion or connection he felt was towards this rat. And his mom, that was the only time she ever expressed any emotion or sadness. So this is the most bizarre family. I don't think they're ever going to talk to each other. Maybe they just need to get another pet rat so that they can express their feelings through that. The moral of the story is, get out there and talk to your neighbors, because you never know what kind of batshit crazy stuff is happening right next door to you. You never know what kind of hopes and dreams. Also, I don't understand the dressing as a woman. When I've told this to other people, I haven't really told this story. I kind of forgot about him, but I mentioned the dressing up in women's clothing, and they think, oh, like the meth is the truth, like when you drink, the truth comes out. But I also think when you drink, sometimes drugs bring out things that aren't necessarily, because when you're sober, I believe that you are meant to discover yourself as a sober, conscious person. And the way he was telling it made me think that this was an offshoot, that he developed this, because he said when he stopped doing the drugs, he didn't want to dress like a woman anymore. So, you tell me. I'm no psychologist. I have no information about anything really, but is it a buried, latent thing? I really believed, as he was telling me that it was something strange, something changed in him as a result of the drug use, because he seemed more truly himself as not that. I guess what I'm suggesting is, if you go, maybe we should try it, do an experiment, do meth and see what weird behaviors it brings out with you. I did it one time and I wanted to fix cars. Okay. But all I could do was stand and look at, my friend had his truck open, and I just stood there and stared at the engine for a few hours. But I don't know. would I have become a great mechanic on meth? We'll never know. All right. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that story. Hit me up. Tell me about your neighbors, would you? Okay. Checking in with Mary Lynn. Signing off. Bye-bye.